Once upon a time, I worked a part-time job at a supermarket. Christmas holidays were just a couple of days away, and everyone who has worked in retail at least once in their life is familiar with the chaos that unfolds at times like these, both for worker and customer. Large dishes are waiting to be prepared, homes need to be decorated, people are stressed. So as an employee, keeping your composure is vital for everything to run as smooth as possible. But faced with enough negative interactions and heavy workload, even the most patient of us will have veins start popping on their forehead. At our market, we offered a service where people could order all the products they needed, and we would run around and do the shopping for them, which they'd simply have to collect later in the store. What made this segment of the job so incredibly nerve-wracking is the fact that these were timed orders. Now imagine you are a young fella traversing aisle after aisle, being bombarded left and right by questions of mostly impatient people asking for wares so exotic at parts they sounded like magic in fairy tales. The clock is actively ticking in the back of your head, perhaps a packet or two of milk falls down and explodes, leaving a mess for you to clean. And on top of that, worst case scenario, the server for the app you use for commissioning the products shuts down. So now you have the privilege of doing it the old-fashioned way, print out a sheet of paper and take item after item, making it extremely inefficient. I happen to be the very person this happened to, so on the very day when the service shut down, people would also not receive an email highlighting which items were missing. Hence, somebody who was on a tight schedule would most likely burst, since it never happened before and they have a feast to prep, making me the perfect scapegoat for all the anger and frustration. Now, why am I telling you this story? I have experienced lots of stressful events, but this one was very different. I felt like I was thrown into a mosh pit, and my only wish was for the time to just pass by as quickly as possible so I can finally rest. What made this so much worse is that you have nothing that could act as a relief, so everything keeps stacking up over time. I was on edge to lose my composure, which I couldn't afford, but to my luck I had an incredible, funny, stunning, mesmerizing, attractive, seriously? Colleague by my side, who I was already working with for 2 years, so we were somewhat close. I want you to imagine that one person in your life where you know once they enter the room everybody will have a good time. He was that kind of guy. We shared a love for gaming, broken humor, etc., etc., and despite being agitated at that time, sweat dropping down my forehead, having this urge to punch a hole in a wall, it felt like I had this restart, or better, refresh, by good company. We would crack jokes and it would lighten up the mood, take off some of that madness, make the job almost enjoyable. Looking at the story and comparing it to situations of other people who struggled in any kind of way, given struggle was always more manageable when shared with somebody close to them. My childhood friend just got his results back for his bachelor's in mechanical engineering and aced it. When he shared the news with me, he mentioned how those Saturday nights of us playing TFT really helped him to reset. I reciprocated that energy, being somebody who's always coming very close to burning out. Outside of work-related struggles, there are also those revolving around mental health. Having a friend who I can always talk to, who understands, who shares certain issues, is like a safe haven you can always turn to if everything just becomes too much to handle. It helps you to move forward without breaking into a million pieces, so should you find yourself in a situation like this, don't be afraid to turn to somebody, for all it takes is a friend to help you carry this burden of life and ease your journey upon it. All it takes is a friend, but what if said friend is not around? I believe social isolation has only one benefit, and one benefit only. Germany used to have a slogan going, quote-unquote, the land of poets and thinkers. And I had a conversation with one of my friends about societies in different countries. If there was one experience we shared, it was that German people tend to be less open-minded, more inside themselves than out into the world. Just like anybody else, they can be good company, but it might take a lot more time investment to get to that point. He told me a story he heard of a woman that came here from Spain to study. She shared how the social life was vastly different from how she was used to it, and got the general idea that people were more repulsive than inviting. Although what was so significant about that experience was that this solitude gave her time to have a look inside herself. You're not surrounded by people all the time, you're not distracted, you can think, hence where the slogan could potentially come from. To give something to other people, you have to have something to give in the first place. What I want to say with that is that this solitude can help you understand more about yourself, who you are, what you are capable of. I have made few mistakes in my life, but one of those few mistakes involved trusting a friend more than myself. I was about to finish school and got closer to one of my classmates who turned out to have similar interests in business as I had. So as more time passed, I was so distant from all my other friends that he became almost like a brother to me. As some of you know, before making YouTube videos, I was big on TikTok and sold prints of my artworks online. The problem here was that whenever I had to make a decision where I was unaware of what followed next, it could be paperwork, registrations, ideas, etc., etc., I valued the opinion of that friend more than my own. What makes this so dangerous is that I had no clear will, no clear path. It was like walking and tumbling back and forth on a foggy road. Because a couple of months into working on this business, I realized that I had no interest in it whatsoever. Another factor that might have played a role in it was that this person seemed to be less involved in the business than myself, despite being the official owner. Point is, I wanted to be an artist, create, make more. I talked to my friend about it, and the answer I received was that there was no way I could live from that, and that the business was the number one priority. So I stayed and continued drowning together with this sinking ship, because not only was this business a betrayal to who I was as a person, but so was that friend. From that moment on, I have realized my mistake, because from that moment on, I was alone. Nobody to depend on anymore. I had to forge my own path, and my own path I forged. I believe that relationships, whether romantic or platonic, should never be intertwined. They should be close, but only parallel to each other. Two people living not one, but two lives together. Which is also why I now believe the phrase "show me your friends and I'll show you your future" to be partially incorrect. To have a clear vision, self-respect and discipline is what will help you avoid falling prone to vices your friends might indulge in. Most of my friends in school went to parties and drank lots and lots of alcohol, while I abstained from that. But just because they did X questionable activity didn't mean they were bad friends. Although that only worked because I had very strict values and always followed these. If you look at my example with my business partner, things were a little different, since my choice in career was very vague, almost non-existent. Remember, it is your life to live. Believe in yourself and take a strong step forward, being always fully aware and responsible of the consequences. Should that not be the case, you risk to break your legs, for all it takes is a friend for you to trip and fall. All it takes is a friend, but what if you have none? That may sound very silly to some, but very real to others. I luckily never was in a position like this, but that is because I was always ready to face rejection. Back then I used to talk to a lot of people online, and the connections I made felt real. I met my girlfriend of almost 5 years, talked to countless artists, some smaller, some bigger than others, and at that time I had nothing to offer but who I was as a person. TikTok wasn't a thing, short videos weren't a thing. I had about 3,000 followers on Instagram, but nonetheless people talked to me, even people with over 50, over 100,000 followers. I feel like that somewhat changed over the years. Socializing on social media doesn't really feel the same anymore, especially since everyone turned into a superficial content creator. Something that bothers me extremely is that now everyone seems to think that there is an ulterior motive behind each and every action, making it impossible to have a conversation without feeling like a leech. It's a shame because I enjoyed conversing with other people so much all the time. It's this feeling you have when reading a book, a story that you can't put aside, and I would just wish people would treat each other more human again. Of course, there is the real world as well, but that would require you to actively go somewhere to meet people in the first place. And I don't really like going out that much for the sake of networking. I'd rather do something with the friends I already have. Point is, the reason why I'm saying this is that the opportunity to meet new people nowadays that want a genuine relationship can be quite difficult, especially if you're already out of school. Which makes it so much more important to take those chances whenever they arise. Got a Discord invite, a WhatsApp group, book club, etc., etc. Take it, talk, try. I met people over another friend of mine playing League of Legends, and because of engaging with those, I was able to meet even more people and go to conventions with them rather than being on my own. If you're somebody who has struggled to make connections, what has always worked for me was to just show honest interest in somebody. Everything is a give and take, and you cannot expect to receive something if you don't give something in the first place. Ask questions because you're curious about the person and not to simply get an answer. Try to find something you're both passionate about, or maybe just exchange thoughts and opinions. Maneuver the convo into certain directions that make it blossom, but don't force it. I believe we people have a feeling for atmosphere, so just trust your gut and go with it. Because to have friends is extremely important. It means entering their world. It means experiencing a new life. Hey, yeah, what's up?